Welcome to the American Intelligence Media. I'm your host, Douglas Gabriel, and I'm with my friend, Michael McKibben, and we're going to talk about his favorite subject. He doesn't quite know it yet. It's the Patent Office.
Oh, boy.
Michael, welcome to the show.
Thanks. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah, I'm sorry we're going to talk about the Patent Office, but I asked you this question the other day, and you gave me an answer, and I still couldn't understand it, so I got to ask it again. The Supreme Court case that went up concerning patents. Now, let me give you my completely naive understanding of this. It sounded as if the big monopolies, especially the big tech monopolies, when somebody invents something, they bring it to the patent office. The big tech companies use their lawyers that do this all the time to be what they call patent trolls, to harass that inventor, to say, no, we're not going to let you do that, or you have to get lawyers to defend it, or even once they get the patent approved, then the big lawyers for the monopolies come and they force them out of even having their patents. Now, I know from what you've told me before, there's just a horrible amount of corruption in the patent office. I want to talk about that, but I want you to clarify this new Supreme Court decision, because I still don't get it. Did the good guys win or the bad guys?
Bad guys won.
I should have known.
Yeah, they were ruling on a case that was brought before them that challenged the patent office's right to invalidate a patent through the reexamination process. And that patent reexamination process was dramatically strengthened by something that Obama pushed through called the America Invents Act. And as we now know from this rogue presidency, everything that is named something means the opposite. So it wasn't about America inventing or protecting inventors. It was about giving corporations more power over the patent process, so that even if an inventor gets a patent issued by the patent office, another party can come in and challenge the award of that patent through something called the patent reexamination process. And if they file one of those, which we had filed against us by Facebook, you basically have to go defend your patent again by this challenge before a 3-judge panel inside the patent office. It's quasi-secret. You can find out who the judges are, but you really don't have any transparency into their proceedings. And then at some point after they go through their examination and challenge, and you respond, and you go back and forth in a quasi-court situation. No, it is not a quasi-court. It's an administrative court within the patent office. They pronounce whether or not you can continue to hold your patent, or they might invalidate some of the claims in your patent. So let's say you have 30 claims. They may come back and say 15 of your claims are no longer valid, the other 15 are valid. Or in our case, what they came in and did after Capos left as director of the patent office, they actually invalidated the whole patent and in this secret court. So without going back to the federal court to go through the court system and have a jury trial and all those kinds of things, they just administratively wiped it off. And so this court case was a challenge of that process, to say that the patent office did not have the right to remove somebody's property right in an administrative court, that it had to go back to the federal courts to do. And the Supreme Court, in I think it was an 8-2 decision, said that no, the patent office could take away your property as an administrative court.
You have pointed out that these inserted, illegal, unfounded, unconstitutional administrative courts that make rulings all the time because they're within an agency, or as we're pointing out here, within a patent office, that they have no ground for being. Is that
right?
That's absurd. How can they make a single patent decision? The patent decision, or the patent, Leader Technologies patent, has now, you did a calculation, how many jobs have been created by that one advancement in intellectual property, which was actually, it wasn't only stolen, it was basically a conspiracy of the government against you to take it from you and keep it from you and keep you in courts for 20 years. So how many jobs came from that?
According to a Deloitte study, if you look at the total jobs created for every job that's in a social networking company, the number is 458 million jobs.
From one invention. Now, that was you and 4 or 5 geniuses. How many people were in your company? I know you invested like $20 million or something. I just made that number up. But anyway, lots of your shareholders, you invested a huge amount of money to get this going, and
Right.
you had these brilliant people, and you made these, let's say that it was one patent. It was really more than that, and there was some
Right,
copyrights
we
and all
ended
this
up with
stuff.
3 patents.
So let's say those 3 patents from, really, you were leading this company.
Right.
And so from you, had the American been protected instead of the monopoly and the corporation, how many jobs again? 458 million
jobs.
jobs. So the jobs that have been created by Facebook, which is a ripoff and a lie and a cheat and a psyops, and run by an idiot, and is fake to begin with and always was because it was stolen from your technology, and IBM Eclipse Foundation stole it. Though, what did he spend it on? What did Eric Schmidt spend his money on when he started Gmail and YouTube? What did Peter Thiel spend his money on with PayPal? What would you have spent your money on? It would be a different world, let me tell you, if Americans and their interests and their constitutional right of protecting their inventions was actually happening in America. But you mentioned it's David Kapos, right?
David Kapos.
Did I get it right this time?
Right.
Had been at IBM all those years. Then when the time came they stole your stuff, then he was over at the patent office. And now we know that all patents have to go through Serco, which is a British company. And so the Brits get to look at all the patents before the Americans do in America. And now, as you pointed out, with the Supreme Court decision, even if you get a patent, you may not be able to keep it because if it fits into the program of what a monopoly group of corporations or a monopoly or other corporations want to steal from you because it fits into their program, they simply get bigger, more powerful, more expensive lawyers.
It now appears there are a number of ways that happens. So you got to step back. What we now can see is that there is a parallel operation going on within the Patent Office. There is what the public sees and believes to be happening, and that's what I've always thought. And I've been testing this question of does anybody know about Serco in the patent world, the inventor world, and nobody knows about Serco. And now we know from public documents what is going on in the patent world. So there's 2 things going on. So I know what officially happened, that we filed for a patent, and then we went through I forget how many months it was. It was like 35 months of working with the patent examiner to go back and forth to test our claims, to look for prior art, to get challenged on the prior art, to put things out for public review and challenge. And you go through a long process. In our case, it was a very detailed case, and it certainly was not cursory, as some people are led to believe by the true patent trolls, which I believe are the big corporations, who make it sound like the patent process is trivial. It's not trivial. There's a lot of work that goes in. And so when we finally got our patent issued in 2006, we were exhausted. I mean, this was a long, involved process. So when we got it, we were quite happy. What we now know in 2018 is that 2006 was a seminal year in the Patent Office because the examination process itself had been subcontracted to Serco, this British company. And so what we now see is that all of this work that goes into disclosing to the Patent Office all of your most important secret sauce in order to validate your claim. And keep in mind, the whole point of the patent process is to publish your work so that other people can invent and build upon it. But to do so in such a way that you, as the inventor of the core technology, get a license and can benefit as well with what the Constitution calls a limited monopoly for a period of time, in the case of a patent 20 years. And so that's the incentive for an inventor, not a big corporation. It's somebody, usually 1 or 2 people, who are inventing something. It rewards them for the process. It rewards the inventive process. And it's a brilliant concept that the founders developed, and I think they brought some of those ideas over from England. But the idea is that we would be rewarded. What we now see is that what was going on are several things. One is either the patent office gave it to Serco, who then used their, quote, subcontract to ferret off the ideas overseas and steal them, and then you don't ever see this part of the process. The patent office doesn't disclose that there's any third party involved in the evaluation of your patent. What we now know, that's a lie. That by not telling us, they're lying to us, because in fact these are all going outside the U.S. into this British company. Then they come back. So that's one way they can get stolen. They just get copied by overseas corporations, and then all of a sudden your invention's out there. You don't know how it got out there, but all of a sudden all this value you thought you had just goes away. In our case, it was different. We actually got the patent issued. So then there's another layer of theft that occurs through this, quote, patent reexamination process, which in itself, as best I can tell, is unconstitutional. And it's for a simple reason. A patent is a contract. It's a contract between the inventor and the American people, that the American people are going to give this inventor a 20-year monopoly, less the time it took to go through the patent process, on that invention. And so that's like a property deed. That is a contract. I mean, there are Supreme Court rulings that say that is a contract. And there's other Supreme Court rulings that confirm from the Constitution that once a contract is issued, it cannot be rescinded by the issuer. So in other words, the Patent Office or the U.S. government cannot rescind a contract that's given to you, even if just because they don't like it now, or just because they think they made a mistake. It is a contract in exactly the same way as you hold a property deed to your physical property. And so, as best we can tell, that whole re-examination process is unconstitutional. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court did not overturn the re-examination process in this latest ruling. Now, that could change going forward. Justice Gorsuch and Justice Roberts voted against this re-examination process, but the others voted for it. If you look at their financial holdings now, you can understand why they've all got massive interests in the basically the deep state corporations. So I'm sure they were just following their handlers.
Well, your point, it really strikes home to me, is that part of the patent process now, it's institutionalized, that it goes to Serco, which means international interests. And then it goes, in some cases, like your patent, was then taken by the IBM Eclipse Foundation, given out to a group of people, and many of them used it to infiltrate other countries, Europe, South America, China, Russia, and they basically took what was an American patent and they take it to another country and make billions off of it. And then it reminds me of the fact that so many patents are simply seized because of what they call a national security interest. Now, what's really funny is they send it to Serco and let Serco run it through, and they probably determined to begin with whether it's national security. So we give to the Brits our patents, many of which, 5,000 right now, being held in abeyance or stolen by the Patent Office from American inventors. And they say they're national security issues because they can be weaponized, they can be used by the military. So they're seized. And there's laws that say that that inventor cannot move forward on that invention, tell anyone about it, or start up again or create a prototype, or they get fined and can have jail time. And in many cases, industrial espionage leads to their death. And that's not an exaggeration. And so we're talking about life and death. We're talking about the biggest industries. Look, your patent alone, 458 million jobs have arisen from it, from really one person's drive, one person's patent, one person's invention in America. And then it gets sold to all these other countries. You could go through and name each of the people who took your ideas and then took them to those countries and made fortunes off of them, and they're still doing it today, and it's a monopoly. And what we see also is what you found out, just like you found out in 2006, you now know Serco took over the patent office. Well, before you had just the bad end of the stick, and then you got to find out later that Serco, who they are and how they circumvent the patent office completely and throw Americans into the gutter. So when we look at what happens with other patents that are seized for national security, they're taken into whether it be DARPA or In-Q-Tel or Leidos. Leidos is the incredibly supported through venture capital corporation that is exclusively a military contract with the CIA for their basically cyber warfare and their new inventions. And so that's merged now with Lockheed. So when you start talking about the fact that an invention of an American can be seized by the government, turned over to DARPA, In-Q-Tel, turned over to the Highlands Forum. Highlands Forum gives it to all countries because it's a transnational group. An American invention is then given to our enemies, weaponized and given to our enemies. This is a common thing. This is what happens in America. So what you got to see from the other end was that as you have been fighting this issue over all the time that you and your shareholders have been valiantly fighting this incredible fight against a bureaucracy, you've now found out that the patent office is, of course, run by SES members, that it was run by David Kapos, who was with IBM, that Highlands Forum was really probably behind stealing your idea and weaponizing it, that Serco had already stolen your idea right before you even really had it granted to you. So
we discovered how cleverly simple it is for them to hide all of that behind the scenes activity. We had several shareholders that filed Freedom of Information Act requests to get some sort of view into the reexamination process that occurred on our patent. The one that we had proved Facebook is infringing on 11 of 11 claims. And to cut a long story short, initially they stonewalled us and wouldn't give us anything. And then one of our shareholders filed an appeal, and the Inspector General ordered some disclosure. And so it was heavily redacted, of course, but even within that, we got a view into the process and who was involved. And one of the things that popped out immediately was the backgrounds of these examiners and what corporations they had issued patents for. And lo and behold, we found that on just our Patent Trials and Appeals Board panel, they had issued something like 85 patents between them to IBM, Microsoft, Xerox, and one other company. I think it was Cisco. Anyway, it's clear these examiners are in bed with these corporations, and so they're going to issue whatever those corporations file. And so the idea in the patent office is the more patents you get, the more you protect or build a moat around anything you might claim in the future going forward. Ours clearly slipped out of their grasp in the formative days. We were very careful about how we filed our patent and about how we protected our patent. And so there was not an early possibility for them to steal it while it was still on the drawing board, except through our patent attorney, which ended up being the case. Our patent attorney actually is the person who actually gave the IBM Eclipse Foundation our source code through a project he was working on with us, where he was holding custody of our source code, presumably as under protection of our attorney-client privilege agreement, which we now know was a complete fabrication in terms of his commitment.
This is patent theft institutionalized in our own government. And I see it as you created something beautiful like a child, and you were hoping that child would, this scalability of social media would allow everyone in the world to talk to one another in ways that they never could before, right, in a way that no one could even imagine. But they had to change the entire language. They had to change the way they thought if they were even to come up with this idea, which you guys at Leader Technology came up with.
We developed the whole lexicon that's now used in social media.
And I was mentioning recently, you had the whole thing, all the messaging systems and the dashboards and the communication systems and the video systems, and you had the whole thing. It was all there, folks. It wasn't invented by these people, these Silicon Valley cardboard cutout, pathetic warlord cyber kings. I so dislike them because so many of them are completely fake. But this child that you birthed was then taken from you by the state, and you have no visitation rights. It is disgusting. It hurts my heart as you're describing this, and I'm thinking, the more time goes on and the more you fight this system, it's the same group of familiar people. It's the same type of greed and just, the 7 deadly sins gone crazy with people who become mad with power. They're being charged. The same people that did this to you can be charged with hundreds of other crimes found in your timeline or in the timeline of your friends, Americans for Innovation. So it really upsets me because it's kind of like divorce court where, they take your child from you and then they say, well, based upon this false evidence here, I'm going to capriciously determine that you don't get to see your children anymore. Not only that, you have to pay.
Analogy.
You have to pay. The whole time, you have to pay. You don't get to see them. And by the way, every time you ask to see them, we're going to charge you more money. But you're still not going to get to see them. And that's what's happened to you. You keep paying how many millions of dollars in legal fee to date?
Well, I'd rather not give you that number.
Huge amounts.
More than 10.
How much?
More than 10 million.
More than $10 million to defend the fact that you birthed a beautiful child. It was taken from you. And then it was inoculated. It was put into a foster home. You don't know where the child is. It's a disturbing thing. And this happens to many inventors. You talk with a lot of people who go through these same kind of things. I think you were just on the phone with someone.
Right.
Other people who go through this. This isn't an isolated incident. This is institutionalized.
No, this is standard operating procedure now. Our courts are in on it. The Patent Office is in on it. And that may sound like a conspiracy theory, but when you actually see the conduct of these courts, there's another inventor out in California who's got about 16 different patents, and she is fighting the same group of people, and she's getting the runaround. It's not even, they don't even hardly hide it anymore. These judges, in her cases, have holdings in the very litigants that she is suing, and yet the judges won't get off the case. And it's like a round robin. So she'll complain about it. They'll say, no, we're not going to get off the case. And there's nobody to go to. Who are you going to go to complain about the fact that these judges are not following the Constitution? I mean, it is a racket.
Well, how about in your case? Oh, let's go to the patent office while David Kapos, who'd been with IBM for 20 years, and say to him, oh, excuse me, sir, I believe that IBM Eclipse Foundation stole my patent that you had.
Well, he formed the IBM Eclipse Foundation. It's even worse than that.
It's even worse than that. I can't even characterize it evil enough, can I? Even when I'm in a bad, even when I'm being grumpy. It's just, it's uncharacterizable, the evil that has become, I hate to keep using the word institutionalized, but this is ingrained. This is bureaucratic. These administrative groups that you talk about, these are simply administrators making sure that the bureaucracy goes on.
Well, I think people can do something about it. I think we've seen enough evidence. Citizens have seen enough evidence. We know who these people are. And what they are is that they're running a whole different governmental structure. I won't even call it a government. It's a corporation. They're running a corporation right on top of our own government. The thing is, folks, we're the last to figure it out. They've known this for a long, long time, even before the American Revolution. So what we have to do is we have to start waking up. I know it's an overused term, but we really have to start waking up our fellow citizens to let them know. The reason that Hillary is still running around raising money And the reason that James Comey has got his book tour going and they are not arrested is because they truly have a different playing field for these people than the rest of us. And it is institutionalized. It is run by the senior executive service employees that are entrenched in right beside our civil servants. The contracts go to Serco, which is eventually, Michael's work showed that it goes right back to the crown. And then we have we think that intelligence is important to have in the United States, and it's all farmed out to foreigners. And even if it weren't farmed out, Hillary's got a server in her bathroom to let the whole world know. You see, folks, the joke is on us.
Right.
We, the good people, the good patriots of America, we were the last ones to find this out. Now, I am asking you, we need to get behind Michael McKibben, because right behind him are many other good American inventors that need their work protected. If we do not protect the entrepreneurs and the innovators of America, we have nothing. You can bring back all the business, all the factories you want, but it is innovation that has always driven America to be the exceptional country it is. My fellow brothers and sisters, it is time for us to get together and take the swamp out.